waiting for you to come along. I was just there reflecting on how the day had gone so wrong. But there you stood, your eyes met mine, you asked to bum a light. I had no way of knowing that I'd fall for you that night. You said I'm gonna catch you if I can. Down the road we'll be older, holding hands. If you see things the way I do, then in your mind I'm holding you, and I'm gonna catch you.
Hey Will, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey Sean, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. Just got home from Guitar House of Tulsa. They all said hello.
Oh, yeah, the store full of rascals. Yeah,
Yeah, right? It's one of the best stores in town, isn't it?
the best store in town. Yes.
I know. Drew and the crew just keep everything rolling, and they hook me up with good equipment. And anyways, and you got to check out his album, right? Little plug for Drew, right? Check out his self-titled album.
Yeah, Drew Winn music. Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Tom Bukovac on guitars, right?
Oh, yeah. Hey, he had some heavy hitters playing on that.
Man, it's so good. So, Will, we're friends now, and we know a lot of the same people, but the viewers don't know who you are. So let's just run through the band you're playing in right now and where you're at for the moment.
Right now, I'm in Vero Beach, Florida, and the band I'm playing in is called the Reckless Shots, or Dave Scott and the Reckless Shots. We play up basically from Central Florida south. However, we did just go to Memphis in January, and we played at the International Blues Competition, got into the semifinals, which was not easy to do considering there were 200 and some odd bands from all over the world competing. Played on Beale Street for 4 nights and Hard Rock Cafe 3 nights. It was awesome.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, we stay real busy. We play a lot of original material and covers, but we take the covers and twist them our own way. So,
what type of covers do you guys do? Like, what's one of them you do?
Oh gosh, we do. I'm Ready. Old blues tune. We kind of put a funky beat on that. We do. Oh my gosh, what all do we do? The Tom Petty. We do some Tom Petty, and of course we stay pretty true to that because you can't mess with Tom Petty, man. So, but do some Freddie King. We do some Clapton. We do some J.J. Cale. We do some Allman Brothers. We do a really cool song we're working up right now by Solomon Burke called None of Us Are Free. A really cool tune that actually Skinner even recorded that. So
Cool.
It's a lot of fun. We stay incredibly busy. We have a huge following. We had about 40 fans follow us up to Memphis. So
Wow, that's pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah, so now tell everybody, since it's GuitarsOK, you play guitar, right? You sing. What else do you do?
I play guitar. I write a lot of the original material. Dave and I pretty much split the original material. I sing, of course. I'm Dave and I split lead vocals, and we both play lead guitar. Dave is the star of the show because he's a lead guitar player's dream come true. So I enjoy sitting back and watching him play, and then he yells over to me and says, "Whip it, cut it, man." It's my turn. And so we get to trade off. We do a lot of dual guitar stuff too, which is harmonizing and stuff. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So where do the people find you? You said, I said Facebook, but you also have an album on Spotify. So go ahead and give a plug real quick.
Yeah, I did an album in 2008 up in Boise, Idaho. It's called Once in a Blue Moon. It's on iTunes. There's a song on there actually called Nothing Fancy about one of my old bands in Tulsa. And you can also look up recklessshots.com to see where we're playing now.
Awesome. I'll put the links in the show and everything so people can just click on it and it'll just take them right to it. And if you have any YouTube videos, send them to me. I'll put the links in there because we were talking yesterday about the Facebook videos might not be shot as well as maybe some other ones on YouTube or something.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of us on YouTube. Most of it's, shot by cell phone video. So we are working on some video production and recordings right now. So we don't really have any official, band videos, but we're working on it.
Awesome. Now, before we dig into your past, you play what, like some Les Pauls, and you just bought a Tele, I think you were messaging me earlier. So let's talk about your guitars for a minute.
Started out on Les Pauls always. Well, actually, I started out when I was 10 years old. I wanted, a friend of mine had a guitar and an amp, and I wanted it. My dad said, okay, if you want it, you got to go work. So I actually went over to a friend of his restaurant in Noel, Missouri, and worked all summer to get the money to buy my first diamond. It was a Diamond Strat copy and an Ampeg 212 amp, and I cannot remember what model it was. That was my actual first electric guitar. As soon as I could, after I saw Jimmy Page, Gary Rossington, on and on and on, Clapton, everybody playing, Keith Richards, of course, playing Les Pauls, I had to figure out how to get one. It took me a long time, but I finally got into the Les Pauls, played those through high school into my Tulsa years, also out in Santa Fe a little bit. And then I switched to a Strat for many, many years. Now I'm back to Les Pauls. Just can't
What
get
kind
away.
of Strat? Was it like a HSS or was it like an SSS? Like what kind of Strat?
No, just a good old American standard Strat. Yeah. I like the maple finger boards. I feel like they ring a little more. So I've always liked the maple finger boards just a little bit better. Everybody has their own preference, but hey, I'll play a rosewood one too. Just give me a guitar, I'll play it.
Yeah, right. So you've been playing some Les Pauls again lately, and then you just bought a different one. So what's the Les Paul styles you're using right now?
I'm using a 58 reissue Wildwood, which is Wildwood is a store in Colorado, Colorado, outside of Denver, and they have Gibson Mix Special Les Pauls for them. They kind of get the creme of the creme Les Pauls. It weighs about 8.6 pounds. I like the lighter Les Pauls. I think they sound better. There's people that will, say the thicker they are and the heavier they are, the more sustain and all that. Well, it could be true, but I prefer the lighter ones. I like to, when I buy them, I don't plug them in. I play them acoustically, and if they sound good acoustically, then they're going to sound really good amplified.
That's a common thing I've seen a lot on with some of my player friends back in the Buffalo area, Toronto area, now in Tulsa out here. That they just sit there and play them first, just unplugged and hear it ring and how long the note sustains, all that kind of stuff, right? You can hear it acoustically.
Yes. And most of the time when I practice at home, I don't plug it in. I go in and I just sit and go over my stuff. And then, of course, if I'm trying to get my tone adjusted or something like that, I'll plug it in. But most of the time I play it acoustically. Yeah,
and you just bought a Telecaster, didn't you?
I did. You want to see it?
Yeah, come on, bring it on the screen.
I think I got it right here.
Yeah, seafoam green, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
Ah, look at that.
Still has plastic on the pick guard with the American flag on it. That will disappear shortly, but it's a 62 vintage reissue. Just a really cool guitar with a rosewood fingerboard. So there you go. I broke my own rule.
I like it. So have you even plugged it in yet or no?
Just when I was about to purchase it yesterday. Yeah. But I'll show you my main guitar.
Yeah, bring that out too. Come on.
This is one of many because, as you know, Drew is constantly tempting me. This is a 58.
Oh, nice.
Little bit of flame going on there, but I've had the super flamey white, just crazy Jimmy Page looking, Joe Walsh looking guitars, and those are cool, but kind of getting more into the plainer tops. It's all stock. I don't change anything on my guitars at all. The only thing I might change sometimes are the tuners, and if I do, I'll put on the exact like vintage tuners, but maybe a Grover or something, an upgrade, but it looks the same. I like to keep
Yeah.
them.
Are you one of them guys that change out the bones at all? Go to the nut bone style, you know?
Yeah. No, I figure if it's not good, I'm going to know in about 15 seconds if I like it, and I just don't want to mess with it.
I don't blame you. I'm the same way. I don't really change out too much. I'll show you the one that Seth changed out. Hold on.
Okay. I'll put this up.
Yep, put that one up. So this was $150. This is $150. This one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a Squire, right? And he upgraded it. We upgraded it with different, like, kind of, different color, gear and stuff.
I like black. I like.
Yeah, we put it. You like that? You like all the black kind of?
Yeah.
We put in the Seymour Duncan's vintage, some vintage style, and these got 12s on it, and it's an open C.
Okay.
So playing slide and playing all the open C style, with Seth.
Did you break the action? Also?
What's that?
Did you break the action on it also?
He set it all up for me, so I just went with whatever, however he set it up. And there's an episode in my YouTube show here that everybody can check it out. It's in his shop where he just ripped it all apart, and I time lapse it and show segments where he's putting everything back in, resoldering, all that kind of stuff. And that's my first guitar I've ever done that to with any of my guitars. I don't really rip out the stuff,
Well, I'll tell you, besides being a great guitar builder and tech, the guy's a monster guitar player too.
Oh my God. Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of episodes. In fact, for the viewers out there, I created a playlist of just Seth Lee Jones, and a playlist of The Colony, and a playlist of Paul Roper and all them guys. And I saw Paul Roper. I don't know if you know him. He was at the shop today too.
Yes, I do. I know Paul very well. He's another great player. There's a lot of great players in Tulsa.
Yeah. So now that we know where you're at, and right, because you're in Florida.
Yes.
Right. And we know you're playing in a rock band and doing all the cool stuff with real amps, right?
Yeah.
You're living the dream.
Yeah.
And we know you play the guitars like the Les Pauls, and you got a Tele. So let's go back in your history and delve a little bit into like where you're from, and let's start with wherever you want, like where you're born or whatever. So go ahead.
Well, I was born a little baby child, and I was born in Rogers, Arkansas. My parents moved to Tulsa when I was about 3, and grew up in Tulsa. Went to Edison, a short time at Cascia Hall, and then formed my first band in high school called South Wheeling, we called it, and with a bunch of good friends of mine. And we played in the garage. We had a garage out back, and we had it upstairs, and we'd just camp out up there. I mean, minute school was out, all the cars pulled up at my house. We were up in that room, and we had a ball, and we just played and played. We played till 2 a.m. because it didn't bother we didn't think it bothered anybody, but so yeah, that's where it all started basically. Besides, when I was a little kid at 10, I just always wanted to play the guitar ever since I saw the Beatles and heard the Stones. And then when I heard the Southern sound is what really got me. I saw Leonard Skinner in Tulsa, and just, that was what I wanted to sound like. That was that Southern, just something about it just grabbed me. So I love that sound. But I also didn't want to play in cover bands and copy stuff that had already been done. So I avoided that and taught myself how to play. I don't read music. I read chord charts, but therefore I have my own sound from Tulsa, thank God, because it's taken me a long way. So
who was around Tulsa back then when you're growing up, or you started in high school listening to it? Was there anybody like JJ Cale around, or any of them kind of guys?
He was, but I was in the younger generation, so I couldn't go to the clubs at that time. JJ Cale, Leon, all those guys at Clapton were jamming in the bars. But I remember the Gap band playing. I remember Jim's Byfield, Jim Sweeney. Marcy Levy and those guys were playing around town. oh man, there were so many good players. I could go on and on and on. But
amazing the list of players that came out of this area, like Carl Rado and all them guys, and Teagarden was with Bob Seger and all them.
Yeah, the only time I got to see Rado play was with Clapton. I saw Clapton many times. But I never, I was just about 10 years younger than all those guys, and maybe even 15 years younger than them. So I was just on the cusp when all that was kind of fading out. But Jim Byfield and those guys were just unbelievable. We'd sneak in. At that time, they weren't so strict about your age,
Yeah.
And that's when we started playing all the keg parties for high school and all that kind of thing. So got pretty popular at that time.
So you were in a band and you were playing guitar. Were you singing too then?
Yes, I was. Yes.
Okay.
Probably not very well.
So what happened then after high school? Like, did you stay in the area or did you leave after high school?
Yeah, I stayed in the area, kept playing, moved over by Woodward Park with my fam, and was playing in my bedroom one day, just jamming along and trying to cop some Skinner licks and stuff. And there was a knock on my door, and I'm like, I didn't know anybody in the neighborhood. I thought that's weird. So I went downstairs, opened the door, and there's this guy standing there with long hair, mirror shades on. It looked like, to me, like, I thought it was Leon Russell or somebody for a minute. I'm like, what? And he said, hey, how you doing? My name's Larry. I said, hi, Larry, I'm Will. I'm like, okay. And he said, was that you playing the guitar? And I said, yeah. And he said, man, well, I've got a band here in town, and are you playing with anybody? And I said, well, yeah, I've got some guys I get together with and play. And he said, well, I heard you playing some Skinner in there. And he said, why don't you come sit in with my band tonight? I was like 17, 18. And I was like, wow, okay. So sure enough, they took me down to McDonald's Hideout, and I got up and played Freebird. And man, it went real well. I remember a big bar fight that night and everything, but Larry kind of took me under his wing, and he took me out. He had I don't know if you're familiar with Larry, but he's kind of he's been around Tulsa a long time and played for a long time around there. Most musicians know him. And he had a really good band. I think they were called Full Moon. And they played all over the place and opened for Little Feat and all kinds of people. And anyway, he took me under his wing as a young man and took me and introduced me to the bar owners, showed me how to book gigs, told me what to say and not to say. And therefore, I went out and started getting my band gigs, playing around. We changed the name of the band to Nothing Fancy, named after a Leonard Skinner album. And we started playing all over the place.
That's pretty awesome. So you guys were rocking it out, playing some originals, right? Doing some covers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, so how long did that last for? A couple of years or something?
Well, it went on for quite a while. We ended up going to the recording studio and recording some original materials at Tulsa. It was called Tulsa Studios, a big, giant production company. Actually, Ronald Reagan, of all people, had done an ad in there at one point, which blew our minds, but we didn't even know who he was really. But it was like, it sounds familiar, man. But anyway, we did a recording in there, and I took the cassette. We had to record from midnight to 6 a.m. because that was the cheap rate, because we couldn't afford it otherwise. And took that cassette and dropped it off at KMOD, and they just looked at me and said, yeah, cool. You can put it over there. And I saw a box full of cassettes, and I went, my heart just sank. So I chunked it in the box and got in my car and drove home. And about the time I hit the driveway, my girlfriend came running out screaming and yelling. And I'm like, what's going on? She said, turn the radio on. And I turned the radio on, and lo and behold, they were playing my song, our song, on the radio. So that was I can still feel the chills from that day. It was like, oh my God, to sit in my car and hear myself on the radio was just about the coolest thing in the world.
And for the younger people listening and watching, radio was king back then.
Yes.
And you really want to get on the radio. And it was I think your years, we talked earlier about this. I think it was prior to like MTV being, skyrocketing everybody out, right?
Absolutely. So, right before MTV hit. Yes. So that was the only way to get your music out at the time. Nobody was doing videos, or it was just starting. So.
Yeah, and there was none of this internet, this World Wide Webby thing, and there was no like Instagrams, none of that. So when people try to wrap their brains around it, you really are trying to get to the radio. And if you can get on the radio, man, that's
you're a superstar at that point. And I mean, when we had gigs, we'd have to make posters and go put them on telephone poles. That was the way people knew you were playing anywhere. There was no way to get the word out. Otherwise, make a lot of phone calls. That kind of thing. But that led to the Canes thing, which was really cool. So,
you mean you had to actually post things, like we call it posting on Facebook? But you had to physically.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really crazy. You're out there probably with a bunch of signs. I remember it growing up in the 70s in the Buffalo area, that all the signs on the post and stuff, right? And you're looking around and going, oh wait, these are all like from last year.
Yeah. No, you go, get a photo, which took forever to try to get all the band members together in one place, and we photo, and it was always a friend doing it, and then you'd put the name of the band, put where you're playing, and you'd make 100 copies, and you go out and everybody would go different directions, start sticking them up with a stapler, and that the time.
So what happened with Canes then? Tell me the story about that.
Well, we got the KMOD airplay. We got on there and we started getting some gigs. I tried to remember a lot of the clubs. A lot of them are gone, but I remember the Play. I remember, we played at the Play. We played at Charlie's Nostalgia. It was a place where they did that night shift show. We also played on night shift, but I started calling Canes Ballroom, and I started calling saying, can I talk to Larry Schaefer? Because I heard that was the man. And they said, yeah, we'll get back to you. And I never heard anything. So one day I just drove over to Canes and walked in during the day and walked back in there, and there was an office, and there was a guy sitting there, and he looked up like, who in the hell are you? And I said, hey, I told him who I was and gave him a cassette and told him we had a song on KMOD, and he was cool enough to give us a chance to play at the Canes. It was right after New Year's. It was like January 8th. It was like the weekend after New Year's, and he started 82. My gosh. And he put us in there, and that led to many more gigs at the Canes. And I'll be grateful to Larry Schaefer forever, because, at that point we pretty much thought we were on our way.
So what happened then? Eventually you're playing at Canes and all that kind of stuff, but the story doesn't end there. So what happened?
We played everywhere we could play around Tulsa, and I wanted to take the band on the road, and we just it would have been great if we would have had a bunch of money behind us, but we didn't. So we wanted to go on the road, but all the guys, they had day jobs, and we had to, look at reality. And of course we were getting pressure from everybody else. Oh man, don't quit your jobs and all that stuff. So all decided, no, we're going to hang. We took a fateful road trip through Texas that we won't talk about, but that was another experience that would take me a while to tell you about, but that was interesting. But after that, everybody said, no, we don't want to do that. So I decided I gotta get somewhere where I can, actually make some money, because at the time the pay was not good at all for bands in Tulsa, and I just knew, there was only so many places to play for local bands. So I thought, my mom had moved out to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she said, well, there's a ski resort here. There's people with, there's a lot of venues you could play. So I said, okay. So I packed up my little family. That time I was already married with 2 children, and we moved to Santa Fe. And I got connected with some incredible musicians there, because you had guys from LA, New York, Nashville. Everybody was there, living there or passing through. So it really elevated the level of guys at that point I was playing with.
So you were telling me the other day when we were talking about a story about a house and a guy that you went into and met.
Yeah. I was playing, I got hooked up with a band called John Asher and the Emergency Blues Band, and we started playing, boy, we were good. We were playing a lot of New Orleans type stuff, Neville Brothers, that kind of thing. And I was up at his house recording and noticed as I drove up there, man, this is a really one of the higher end neighborhoods in Santa Fe. And I thought, wow, John must be doing very well. And so I thought, well, that's cool. So we were rehearsing, and I went in to grab a glass of water, and I noticed down the hallway a bunch of gold records on the wall. And I'm like, what? And I looked up, and they all said Dan Fogelberg, Dan Fogelberg, Dan Fogelberg. And I'm like, so I came back. I said, what's up with the Dan Fogelberg records? And he said, oh, he's my roommate. And I said, again, what? So make a long story short, they had grown up together. John had played in some bands with Dan. John was an artist and living in Santa Fe. Also, he was an artist as well as a musician. And there I was sitting in Dan Fogelberg's house with John, and that led to a friendship with Dan. And Dan would come to town and sit in with us a lot. And people don't know that Dan was a really good electric guitar player. And well, we knew that, but he was a really good blues player and loved to play the blues. And he didn't have a beard. He'd shaved his beard off. His hair was cut a little shorter. So they didn't really know who he was. We'd just say, hey, Dan's going to sit in with us. And he'd get up and play. And we'd all laugh because people were like, God, that guy, who's that guy? And he'd disappear, go out on the road, But that led to many more cool experiences with him, including playing one night in a very crowded club called El Farol. I was in the middle of a guitar solo, and a dance floor was packed, and I feel these two people standing in front of me, and I looked up, and it was Joe Walsh and Dan Fogelberg standing in front of me. And so I immediately went to take my guitar off my neck and hand it to Joe Walsh, and he goes, no, man, you're doing great, man. And then they faded off into the crowd, and I'm like, wow, that was weird. But you just never knew. They were shooting a lot of movies and things like that. You never knew. We had Sam Shepard sitting on drums. We had Billy Gibbons used to come to town all the time. He didn't sit in with us, and I actually asked him to once, and he said that at that time they had a contract that did not allow anyone from ZZ Top to sit in with anybody. So, but he did give me a ZZ keychain and a hat.
That's cool.
Talk about making my day.
That's cool.
And I love it. Plus, like I said, it was a ski resort, so people were on vacation. There was a lot of money, so we got paid great, and it was just a blast.
So how long do you think you're out there for?
I was in Santa Fe often, probably about 12 years. Then I moved to the Northwest, ended up getting some bands going up there, opening for some big names. Had a fluky situation again happen at a music store. A guy asked me, I had been up to the Northwest a couple of times and played, and then come back to Santa Fe. And I went into the music store the next time I went back up to Bellingham, Washington, is where it was. And he said, are you back in town? I said, yeah, I am. And he said, well, there's a gig coming up. Would you be interested in playing? I said, well, what is it? And he said, oh, you'd be opening for Jefferson Starship Unplugged. And at the time, I had a friend that played acoustic, and he and I had done some shows together. And I said, give me just a second. And I called him real quick, and I said, Wayne, do you want to do this? And he goes, let me think about it. Yeah. And we ended up at the Mount Baker Theater opening up for Jefferson Airplane Unplugged.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. It was just, one of those mind-blowing things. And then back to Santa Fe. So
back to Santa Fe. And then somehow you ended up back in Tulsa again, right?
Yes. I ended up years later moving back up to the Northwest, this time to Boise, Idaho, getting another band going. and that's where I recorded my album. And I was working at a hospital as a materials management supervisor. And anyway, make a long story short, the company I was working for was opening a lot of new hospitals, and they were opening one in Texas, and I wanted to get closer to home. I was missing Tulsa and my friends, and just it was time to come home. I'd been gone a long time. And so I moved down to Texas and New Braunfels. And then as my contract expired, I moved back to New Mexico area, where I ended up on Facebook with my love of my life from 5th grade. I hadn't seen in 30 years in Tulsa. So it didn't take long for that little bud to sprout. And I moved back to Tulsa, and we got married and lived in Tulsa for 5 years before I came to Florida.
Now that's where you were working like with Drew, right? When you came back, yeah. I think, right?
Yeah. I went into Drew's shop. He was on Admiral at the time, and so he was kind of just taking it over. And I begged him basically, please, please, please let me work here. I really want to sell guitars. And so I quit my materials management gig, which was a fat salary and all that, and decided I was going back into being who I used to be, who was just a guy that played guitar, and I wanted to be around musicians. And Drew is like an encyclopedia of guitars. He's like unbelievable. So I thought, man, I'll be around, a guy that knows everything about all this stuff, and I'll learn a lot. And that's exactly what happened. I really loved working there with Cameron and Drew, and man, Drew's still a really good friend of mine, and so is Cameron. And he's obviously got the killer guitar house now. So. Oh
man, it's so cool. I go there. That's like my home away from home. I just love trying all the pedals, and Jamie's really good there and suggests a lot of good stuff for me. And the main thing for me, you got to find a place. Anybody listening, if you have an area where you have guitar stores still, if you can find one where you walk in and they listen to you play and then suggest things based on what you're playing, then you found yourself a good store, in my opinion, because a lot of the big box stores, they just, if you ask to see something, they'll show it to you, but a lot of times they don't really suggest stuff. Whereas like when I walked in the Guitar House of Tulsa last year, it changed everything about me playing and led to the YouTube channel. And because they just tuned into what I was kind of trying to do and sounds, and then they were suggesting stuff, right?
Yeah, man, there's nothing like, and stepping back in the old days, that's all we had was mom and pop stores. And there was a Music Sound World was the place in Tulsa, and we'd go hang out, and Shields Music. We'd hang out in there all, on a Saturday. We'd hang out all day and play guitars and just BS. And that's where you would meet musicians, and that's how a lot of bands formed. The beauty of that, Drew has achieved that again. And I'm telling you, it's a rare thing these days to have. I
was just sitting in there today, and like I'm just playing away on a custom Strat reissue through an old Fender amp, and a deluxe reverb or something, trying some pedals. And I was only in there for a little bit, and all of a sudden Paul Roper comes by, and all these people are coming through, and they're shaking my hand. I'm like, this is so crazy cool, because I grew up with the mom and pops were everywhere in the stores. And I remember Roy and Candy's here when we moved in 2001. Roy and Candy's. Music Sound World was on Memorial, I think. Yeah. Drew didn't have a store then, but it was still on Admiral, I think, when I got here, 2001. So I remember a lot of them. But I'm going to point out something real quick at this time frame. You and I were actually hanging out, and we didn't know it.
Really?
Remember, I think we went to Eric Johnson together.
Yes, we did. Yes.
I didn't know you then, but I got into Eric Johnson remember the standing room only. Tell me that story about how you were walking around.
Yeah, my wife and I were down there by the Dillon Museum area and that Guthrie Green. We were walking around, and we started walking towards what's the name of that club that he played in? The
Hunt Club?
Right, yeah, by the Hunt Club, and he was next door.
Vanguard.
Yes, at the Vanguard. And we got closer. I started hearing this sound, and I'm like, there's only one guy that sounds like that. And I thought, there's no way. Why would he be playing here? I haven't heard, and because I always, I would know if he was playing. Sure enough, I walked up to the doorman. I said, "Who's playing?" He said, "Eric Johnson." And I said, "Oh my God." And the doorman was cool enough to he said, "He's only going to play like 5 more minutes. You and your wife can go on in." So we went in, and he played like 45 minutes to another hour. So I was standing up on the right. I think there's an upper area up there, and you were down on the floor, right?
Right there.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was telling you, like, I could have bought the tickets for like $80, $100, whatever, to sit there, but I bought the $20 ticket for standing room only, and I was right behind the chairs. I was just like, I can stand here for $20 or whatever and watch it. And I told you he had piano, I think, going that night. He was doing a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh man, it was a magical experience.
Let's talk about something real quick. Pause there. What type of players did you learn their stuff? I mean, you were talking about the Southern rock, like Marshall Tucker band type stuff. What were the guys that you were maybe playing cassette and rewinding it and learning their stuff? What kind of stuff did you listen to?
Absolutely. Alan Collins, Gary Rossington, Steve Gaines. But Dickie Betts was a huge one. And of course, Toy Caldwell. God, there were so many at that time. And the Allman Brothers just blew my mind. I always loved the Allman Brothers, and it was always that Southern kind of sound, and that's really all I listened to was that stuff. So therefore, that was kind of ingrained in me, as well as what they say, the Tulsa sound, just from hearing other bands and other people around town that had that special something that Tulsa has, that it's in the water, I think, but it's a sound that I think we talked about this. It's just kind of almost impossible to explain. It's a groove maybe, but that groove has taken me to I mean, that's been the reason I've been playing all these years, because I had a sound. This town's full, where I am right now, of unbelievable guitar players, and I don't consider I'm no technical guy. I don't, I'm not a shredder. I don't do any of that, but I have a sound, and it's an original sound, and that's what has kept me doing what I do.
I think you and I did talk about it the other day, and I think like Paul Benjamin here in town gets asked that question a few times. I've seen interviews, and I always see him kind of skirting a real answer, other than it's more of a feel, it's a vibe, it could be kind of country, it could be Southern rock, it could be blues, and to me it's just more that it's more that laid back kind of feel when you're playing, kind of getting into it, right? You know what I mean? So I guess it's probably the best bet, right? You could just say, right, Tulsa sound.
Yeah, if somebody can if they could, I don't know how you can, really define it. It's something. It's a mystical thing, man.
I love it.
Benjamin is a really nice guy and another fantastic musician, guitar player, composer, all that. I hold him in high regards. So
I with the playlist, I think I have a Paul Benjamin playlist. If not, I will have it on my YouTube channel. But I have the Colony series, and he's been super nice to me, and I've been out there so much. And I was recording him the other night. Erie Ale is a beer company on Main Street. He was playing solo, and he posted it, and I didn't catch it earlier in the day, so I was eating dinner and I saw it. I said, I gotta go see him play solo. So he was using like an old 1950s like arch top with his magnetone, and I had to go out there. And Jesse Aycock, I don't know if you know him.
Oh yeah.
Jesse and I were sitting together, and then just enjoying Paul's playing. And he did a storyteller session. So we were throwing songs at him, from his albums and different things, and then he was just talking about it to the people that were sitting there, So it became like a VH1 storyteller, kind of thing. And he really puts that on, like especially like church studios and the Tulsa Sound thing where he's wearing like the robes and he does the whole thing, you know, or whatever.
Cool.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah, I posted some stuff recently with him. So let's get back to what you're doing now. So you were talking about Tulsa. You ended up going to Florida. How did that happen? I mean, we all want to go to Florida. Come on.
Yeah, my dad lives in Jacksonville. My sister-in-law's in Miami. My wife and I started coming down, and we're both ocean lovers. We've always wanted to live by the ocean. We just didn't know how or where we were going to be able to do it. And so we didn't want to live in a big city, which, you know, that's where most people go in Florida. And we were told about a place called Melbourne, Florida, that they said was a little bit smaller and that kind of thing. So we went up to Melbourne and we looked around and we were like, yeah, this is cool. But, you know, I've had this little dream in my mind about what I had envisioned the town I wanted to live in. Because I lived most of my life in very small Colorado, New Mexican towns. I got away from the big city a long time ago. So we got on the highway one day out of Melbourne and started driving south down 95. And we saw a sign said Vero Beach. And my wife said, let's check this out. So we pulled off. We drove in. We're like, okay, it's a typical, there's your Target. There's your no. And as we drove a little further into town, we started going, wow, this is kind of cool, kind of a small town feel. Then we got down to a bridge that goes about a mile over to the barrier island. And neither one of us said a word. We were just looking out the window. And I was like, this is it. This is what I had in my mind. So we looked around over there and we were staying in Melbourne. So we had to drive back up. That's about 40 miles north of here. Also, the water was real pretty here, and we liked that. But we came back to Tulsa, and we put a plan together. We're moving. We want. That's where we want to be. We didn't know a soul. Didn't know a soul here.
I understand that feeling because we came down here from the Niagara Falls area. My wife and I, 2001 beginning, and we didn't know anybody out here. I was deciding to go back to school with married with kids and all that stuff. And she was a nurse at the time, so she just applied back then, called up St. Francis, you know, and got a job, and we just moved into town. So I've been there. If anybody's done that before, it's kind of a strange feeling because your first few like weeks or two, you're kind of just sitting there like, yeah, okay, like where is everybody and what do I do? You know, so how did you meet the band that you're in?
Oh man, my wife, I immediately started doing some solo acoustic gigs here, just in some little not the tiki bars, but like just some small clubs around town. And a guy that I met named Lee Miller, who is a pretty famous bass player around here, heard me play and he said, man, you need to come. We have a jam on Wednesday nights. You need to come out and check it out. And I'm like thinking open mic, no way, you know, no, been there, done that, not doing that. And my wife kept telling me, you need to go check this out. You need to go. And I'm like, I don't do open mics. That's amateur night. You know, I'm not doing it. So anyway, she was going out of town and she said, make me a promise. I said, what? She said, you will go to that open mic. And I said, all right, I'll go. So I finally got down there, ordered myself a cold one, got back in the corner in the shadows, looking at my watch, going, okay, we'll be here about 10 minutes. And the house band started playing, and I about knocked my beer over. I was like, what the hell? I mean, they were so good. I was like, I wasn't expecting that at all. It was the best local band I've heard in years. I was like, whoa. And then people started coming up, and the people that were sitting in, it was an amateur night. These were all professionals from New York, LA, all different areas around here that were polished players. And they started picking up, they were playing Pink Floyd, they were playing Doobie Brothers, they were playing all the cool stuff. And I walked out on a break and I called my wife. I'd already been there an hour and a half at that point. I said, I better start practicing. If I'm going to get in with these guys are not messing around. So that's how it all started. And Dave Scott was the run, and he still runs 2 jams a week in town. the nicest guy in the world. He gives everybody a chance to play, and a monster player. He played out in the LA scene for many years. Had a band called Tough Luck that was a national at one point, and they were scheduled to go on tour with Ozzy, and had a situation happen where the band had to break up, and Dave ended up in Fort Lauderdale and then up here in Vero. And so we had this guy from the big pond in this little town, and he's amazing.
So how long has that been going on then?
I've been playing with these guys, I can't believe it, for 2 years now.
Yeah, wow.
We continue to we have a very loyal, huge following. So that makes it so easy. You go to a club and it's full every time you play, and people know the words to the songs. And it's like what I used to dream about when I played clubs when there were 5 people sitting there. You know, it's like, God, this is happening, you know? And
yeah, right.
And
right.
It's just the coolest. We call it the Jamly. And the Jamly consists of all of our friends and all of our supporters. And they all wear a lot of our t-shirts. And it's just really neat.
Yeah, the videos I've seen, there's a lot of people in the clubs and stuff. And it was really rocking and rolling pretty good. I was like, wow. And that was probably video footage from like the local club right there.
Yeah, that was I think the one you saw was just last weekend. Yeah. And man, that's a really neat club here in town. It's an indoor club. 98% of your gigs here are outside. You're playing, and there's tables and there's palm trees growing between the tables. It's really cool. And there's sand on the ground. And one of them's even called the Sandbar. So, but as you're playing, you're looking out at the water, and you're looking at palm trees, and then there's a bar there with a bunch of people. It's like, it's mind blowing. But there's a new club in town here called Filthy's, of all names, and it's real hip, and it's inside. It's air conditioned, and the guy's got a stage set up and a sound system, and it's just awesome.
So let's talk about gear before we finish the interview.
Okay.
When you did go out to this band and you started playing with them and stuff, did you change your gear, and what type of gear did you use or are using currently?
Yeah, I was using a Fender Deluxe Reverb when I first got with these guys, and the places we play, like I said, are outside, a lot of them, and also where it's a powerful band. You need some You know what I mean? You
You
need
gotta push some air, right?
so I moved to I bought a 212 orange cab with vintage 30s. And I'm using a 50-watt Supro Galaxy head. My 58, and then the world's tiniest pedal board. It's got a Bad Monkey, an EP booster, and a digital delay, and a tuner, and that's it.
Wow, you're not playing games with that. You're not doing any toe tapping too much, are you?
Oh no, I like a clean yet biting sound. You know, like a Dickie Betts type thing. You know, even Skinner, Alan Collins, those guys, they weren't real distorted. You know, and I like the sound of the guitar to come through. And if you get too much of that stuff going on, you lose the sound of the guitar.
Right. The notes and the clarity of the notes and everything get lost.
And there's nothing wrong with somebody who's got a lot of pedals. Most of my friends do, and Dave has a lot of them. And if you know how to use them, oh my God, he gets sounds I can't even believe. I just am not that tech savvy, so I keep it real simple.
So 2 knobs or less?
Yeah. And now I recently acquired a Marshall JVM built in England, 50-watt tube amp also, and my Supro's tube. But my backup is a Boss Katana 50-watt head.
All right.
So in case I blow ahead, I can just quickly plug that in and be ready to go.
So it's interesting you're bringing up a touchy subject right now on YouTube and all over. Is like so many bands here in Tulsa, like the co-host of the show is in the hospital right now, Homer. He got hit by a car riding his motorcycle a couple weeks ago. And he plays for Jumpsuit Love Band and Dead Metal Society. But when he was in Jumpsuit Love Band, like so many, they have to go direct. And they're not allowed to use all their amps and everything. But like Dead Metal Society, he just got in before he had the car accident, and he's doing better. So he's in the hospital with rehab and everything. But the point is he was so excited when he went to Dead Metal because he was allowed to actually use amps, and he was scrounging. And so what's the deal down out there? Are you guys allowed to actually use your amps?
Yeah. You know, a lot of these guys are using those Kempers and that kind of thing. But we were working on a situation of going on tour, opening for some big names. At that point, they wanted us to go to the Kempers, and we all have in-ears monitors, but we don't use them. I've got a very expensive set of in-ears that sit in a box over here. It's kind of sad, but no, we're still using monitors and amps. But of course, the bigger places, we mic the amps. We don't have to turn them up as loud. But I'd love to get into the in-ear thing. I've just never had the right mix, but I know it's a great thing. And I'd love to get into that. But man, nothing like a monitor and live amps. Sorry.
I feel the same way. In fact, speaking of Jesse Aycock, give him a shout out. He played at the field.
Yeah, I'm so used to not having them. It's like teaching an old dog a new trick, and it's I like, especially in a bar scenario, you got to hear the audience, man. I mean, and speaking of another name you brought up, Jesse Aycock, look out. My gosh. I mean, you know, you've got these guys just you got anybody wants to put a great band together, they're sitting right there, man. Do that again. And I think we discussed playing on the bigger stages. I can get into it almost more than in a very small, intimate place. On that big stage, I just feel like I'm in a living room or something. But when you got people sitting 5 feet in front of you, man, you better hit every note right. You know, you have a little more.
You mean like when Joe Walsh walks up and looks at you?
Hey, by the way, I think I just destroyed the solo at that point. You know, I just went, hit every wrong note I did because I couldn't believe what I was seeing, you know.
Instead of 2 left feet, you got 2 left hands.
Oh, man. That was, and I'll never forget that. Yeah, I was like, oh, that wasn't good.
That's funny. Well, when we're wrapping up right here, I'm gonna remind all the viewers to check out your stuff on Spotify, check out your stuff on Facebook. I'll put the links down below and all that kind of stuff. And is there anybody you want to give a shout out to? Anybody else out here that you think of?
Larry Arnett, Drew Winn, Cameron Mintz. Wow. Just so many of my good friends back there, Jim Bloomfield and, oh man, Kevin Dahl, Pat Powell, great musicians that I played with. There's many more, but yeah, I just want to say hi to all those guys and don't forget to boogie.
Don't forget to boogie. All right. On that note, we'll hang on the line here for a second. All right.
Okay.
I just want to thank all the viewers for checking out the show today. Please subscribe, hit the bell, ring it, and then share too, please. And check out the playlist I just added to on the YouTube channel. And also, I'll keep an update for everybody out there over Homer's condition because, like I said, I got hit by the car on his motorcycle, and we're going through rehab. And I've been out there visiting him, and he's getting better, but it's going to be a long haul for him. So everybody keep him in your prayers and thoughts. And I appreciate all the listeners and the viewers and stuff. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Will, I appreciate you so much, buddy. I can't wait to come out to Florida.
We appreciate you, Sean. Thank you for doing that. It's really important to have shows like this because, you know, otherwise, you know, you only hear maybe a little bit of the story. Maybe some of us older guys can fill in some of the blanks for you. So
amen to that one. Well, you be blessed. And thanks, viewers. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, Will, I'll be editing now.